What's up, guys? It is Sam here, and I wanted to give you some awesome information and data around TikTok and how the Democratic candidates that are running for president can use this to completely mop up with the numbers. So, with that being said, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it's good to freaking see you. Well, let's get into it. So, what is TikTok? It's an app, and it actually came out in the end of 2016. I think it was in September 2016. So it's been out for about 3 years. It was launched outside of China in 2017, and there's some really interesting growth numbers to talk about with TikTok. And when you have a platform that everybody else is ignoring, but there's a fuckload of attention on it, what happens? You can go over there. It's like if you were to play sports, right, and you're professional in playing sports or just anything, right? And then you go play against like kids in high school. You're just gonna fucking mop up, and that's what it would be like because the other politicians are not on TikTok. Actually, the only politician that I found on TikTok to those people who are in Canada, what's good, but the gentleman's name, I just had it pulled up here and I put it on my other phone, but it's a gentleman from Canada and he's only posting very irregularly, um, but he's got like, I don't know, he's got 6 posts up there and he's, I don't know, 7 or 8 million views. 7 or 8 million views. There's a shitload of attention there. So we're gonna just run through some of this data real quick. TikTok, and this is worldwide downloads according to the App Store in the fourth quarter of 2018, according to MediaNix. They had more than YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat. More than double Snapchat, almost double Facebook in terms of app downloads. Pretty significant, right? And a decent margin, right? Like if we look at this, it's pretty high. I mean, like that's 10 million more downloads for the fourth quarter of 2018 than the next closest, which was YouTube. Interesting. So what I did is I pulled up the App Store for Apple and the Google Play Store for Android. And I've made this really big so you can't see the rest of the page, but you can hopefully see this, that TikTok is actually number 4 out of all the free apps. So out of all the tens of thousands of apps in the App Store, TikTok is ranked number 4. Let's just take a look, just to give you some perspective, some relativeness, right? They're currently ranking higher than YouTube, Instagram, Gmail, Amazon, Snapchat, Facebook Messenger, Facebook, Cash App, Google Maps. Like, that's crazy. And the only reason I think that Disney's number 1 is just because they're doing a ridiculous push right now for Disney Plus, which is kind of interesting. Now, over on Android, it is ranked number 8, it looks like. Out of all the apps in the Google Play Store, it is ranked number 8. And now, think about this. Apple, what is it called? The App Store versus a Google Android. Android, there's a shitload more users, but it's a completely different demo than the iPhone users. Google Android is very fragmented and you have a giant spectrum of different users from the standpoint of Android can be licensed to put on any type of phone, so it generally is not going to work as well as you would something with an iPhone. So that's something to consider, and we're going to get in some of the actual numbers on TikTok in a second in terms of the demographics on there. But the two basically just the 2 app stores in the world that I mean there's other ones, but like there's the 2 biggest app stores in the world outside of China are Google and Apple's, and it's ranked in the top 10 in both of them. And it last year, for most of the year in 2018, it was ranked number 1. And then a shitload of people have downloaded it. So another very, very interesting thing that I thought I'd take a look at is Google Trends. What is Google Trends? Well, Google Trends tracks all of the search volume across the web. So in terms of Google searches. And when anybody searches for the search term TikTok. That's what we put in up here in the search term. And if you look at the data here, this is over the past 12 months. What does that look like? It just looks like it's up and to the right. It's not a giant slope, but it's just up and to the right. You're just gaining more and more momentum throughout all of 2019. So it's starting to become very, very relevant. There's a lot of attention there. If any one of the candidates that are out there wants to get their message out, wants to win, one of the ways you win is by telling more people. One of the ways you sell more product is talk to more people, right? You have to get your message out to more people. So somebody might be like, oh, well, they're only fucking 13-year-olds or 10-year-olds. Well, we're going to get into that in a second, right? Because people just write it off as just nonsense. But we're going to get into the data. And that's why it's exploding. Like I had a post on TikTok that it has over 71,000 views. I have no idea what I'm doing yet. I'm still learning. I'm not really making native content for the platform yet. And native content is what indexes the best on the platform. When I say native content, that just means created specifically for TikTok versus, people are constantly getting pictures for Instagram, but there's the native content specifically for TikTok is different. Also, the interesting thing too, when I was thinking about this, if you take a look at TikTok versus Instagram versus Facebook versus like Snapchat, the biggest thing that's different, TikTok is audio centric. So if you're a politician and you're trying to get your message out to more people, you have a platform that's audio centric, right? You can only tell 60-second stories, but that just means you have to be good. That's all. And it's not like Instagram where some people just post once a day. On TikTok, there's people that are posting 30 times a day, similar to say like Twitter, right, where there's just a shitload of content and a constant like fire hose of information happening. It's all done by the recommendation page, or like the explore page is done by an algorithm. So if somebody went in there and really dominated the election politics, like their hashtags in that area, they're going to over-index relative to other people because there's not any or very, 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 very few politicians that are taking TikTok seriously. We just saw they're more fucking popular in the App Store than all the other social media apps. Why doesn't anybody pay attention? I don't know. I have no idea. Just no fucking idea. I'm getting half as many views on TikTok as I do on YouTube. Almost half. Like 45% almost. I get like 38 over the last 28 days. I have 38,000 views of the content on TikTok. Yes, it's shorter form, but to get that much attention, I've only been using it for about 45 days. Like I have had the account for maybe a year and a half or something, but I haven't really posted a ton. It was very sporadic, and then I decided to start figuring it out about 45 days ago. So I went from 300 followers to like almost 1,300 in 45 days. Anyways, so let's go into some more data. We just see this up and right, but let's look at YouTube search volume. So Google Trends also has YouTube search volume. So anytime somebody goes to YouTube and they search for TikTok, that's what we want to look at. But let's make this interesting, and let's take a look at TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram over the last 12 months. This is what we got. Now this is super interesting. Take a look at this. Mark Zuckerberg is hurting. We see, first of all, let's go through with Instagram. Instagram is the line in the yellow here. Instagram over the last 12 months, losing ground. Facebook is in red. Let's take a look at Facebook. You see Instagram was over here, right around this 50 marker for the first 6 months of the year, and just as TikTok was starting to explode, they came down. Interesting. And they didn't come down as quickly as TikTok came up, but that's interesting, right? Again, this is over the 12-month period, and this is on YouTube search volume, only in the United States, because we're talking about the politicians, right? So that's kind of interesting. We also see the same thing happening with Facebook to a lesser degree, though. We see that it's a little bit below the 25 marker here, and then you see the margin below this line like you can see this right in here. Let me take a quick shot of this to highlight what I'm talking about. This area right here is wider in this margin than over here in this margin. So Facebook's losing ground, Instagram is losing ground in terms of the interest, like what people are actually looking for. And this, when you look at these numbers on YouTube, it is actually hilarious to see, because the amount that Instagram has gained in attention is absolutely insane. This could be super interesting. I'm not sure what's happened in the last month here. I don't know if this is a meteoric rise and then it quickly declines back down to where it was. I don't know, but this rise has been taking place, right? It looks like it really started to pick up right around 6 months ago. So somewhere in May, June timeframe, it started to take off in terms of people's collective interest in TikTok. So if you guys know why, let me know down below in the comment section. Use the hashtag STOLE, and then at the end of the videos and the Q&A segment of the videos, I can talk about them like we're going to do in this video. And by the way, on the way down there, press that subscribe button. But this is absolutely insane. So down here, this could be kind of interesting. What's happening? I don't know what. This is only a small data point, but when you look at, like, let's take a look at the 90-day here and see what the 90-day picture shows, because the 90-day picture still shows they're up and to the right. This doesn't show exponential growth because it's a shorter time frame, like the 12-month shows exponential growth. The 30-day still shows growth, but over the last couple of days, it does look like it's come down slightly from the end of November. Over this last couple of days, it does look like the interest has come down slightly, but even over these last like 3 days here, it's still higher than the first 3 days from 30 days ago. Kind of interesting, right? Another interesting statistic, according to Dater Portal 2019, TikTok is at over 500 million active monthly users on a global basis. Those are just stupid numbers. Those are just that's a ridiculous amount of attention on TikTok. Just a ridiculous amount of attention on TikTok. And ByteDance, which is the company that owns TikTok along with a bunch of other media or social media or just news apps that they own, they have collectively an active monthly user base of 1.5 plus billion people. Facebook has 1.2 billion or something like that on Facebook exclusively. So the collection of the apps that ByteDance has is over 1.5 billion. So if you have 500 million people, where you're like, well, the US is only 350 million. So that's mainly global people. Could, yeah. But let's look at some interesting stuff around the adults in the US when it comes to their age group and their income. The first thing that stands out to me, and this is according to marketingcharts.com, you can see the information right here. Let me scroll down so hopefully you guys can see this. All right. Okay, there we go. This is kind of interesting. So let's take a look at the age group first. So we see the biggest amount is there's about a quarter of the audience in the 18 to 24, a quarter of 25 to 34. So what do we know about what's happening in the election? Is that according to Pew Research, the amount of people in Gen Z, Millennials, and Gen X that's projected to participate in the election in 2020 is going to be greater than the 3 generations before that, the boomers and the 2 generations before that. Meaning that Millennials, Gen X, and Gen Z, that collective is going to be represented at like 63% of total voters in 2020. That's the projection according to Pew Research. And another thing that we notice is players like Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders, and there's a number of others, Elizabeth Warren. According to what we're seeing, some of these people are ranking very well. So if any one of them were to go over to TikTok, they can tell their audience, to the younger generation who's expected to have a higher turnout. Now, also according to Pew Research, if you look at the voter turnout on a, what is it, I don't know what it's called, mid-cycle versus like the regular presidential election, I don't remember what it's called, and you get to see that it's been up, it's going up, especially the younger generations. So that would probably be anybody under 40. That demo between 18 and 40 has, in terms of their participation in the 2018 midterm elections, they saw record numbers. Record numbers. So if these group, right, 18 to 40, is turning out to the election in record numbers, and how do you win? By talking to more people, getting your message out to more people. Let's just stop it right there. But you can let me know what your thoughts are down below in your hashtag stole, and I can get to it at the end. But another super interesting thing here is and a lot of people think it's just for the younger audience, but look at, we still have 13% between the 26% of users, actually close to 30% of users are older than the age of 55. So almost 1/3 of the total audience on TikTok is older than 45. Come on. Like, why isn't anybody paying attention to this? None of the politicians around here. Also, super interesting. Super interesting. Look at this. 100K plus. So this is the income of the users according to ComScore. This is data from ComScore. Less than 25, about 18%. But look at this. 100K plus. 37%. You want more money? You want more donations? I don't know. There's no competition. There's a shitload of people there. It has the demo that's turning out in record numbers. There's also a large number of people who make over 100K. They probably have more disposable income. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Take this video. Share it with your candidate. Like, this will work. They can do it. It's just to put in the work. But just like campaigning, right? If you're going to campaign in the real world, cool, right? You can get in front of a couple people. If you're going to campaign in the real world, that content should be put online. The internet is the thing that you have to win. The internet is, we've crossed over that point where you have the real world and then you have the internet. We've had that crossover point, I believe, where the internet is far more, I mean, look, just for example, look what's happening around the world. Check out Hong Kong. Check out anywhere else around the world. These types of things are happening because of social media, because the connectedness, the democratization of information is happening. So if you want to get your message out and you're running for office and you're ignoring this platform that is fucking gigantic with a shitload of attention in the younger demo, I mean, come on, guys. Like, why aren't you doing this? And I'd love to know what your thoughts are down below using the hashtag Stolt, just like Springcraft Gamer did when he left the comment stating that, do YouTube search for Andrew Yang, then set date range for today. Now scroll through the list of videos. There used to be 2 to 3 videos. Now there are dozens, and they're all Yang content. So one search gets me hours of content. That's why it looks like searches are dropping. Fewer searches are required to get more than enough to watch. Now repeat for other candidates, see the difference. Interesting, one of the ways that we actually track this is through our awareness ranking. You can check out that video on the channel, and we put out an awareness ranking based upon a couple different factors, as Springcraft Gamer mentions. By the way, thank you so much for the comment. I really appreciate the comment and the support. But we actually measure that, and if you go through and you search for each one of the candidates' names as he or she mentions, and you take over the last 24 hours, the videos that have been published for each one of the candidates' names when you search for the candidate's name on YouTube, and then you take the collective a number of views for the videos that have been published within the last 24 hours, and you aggregate them together, and you do that for each candidate, and then you see who had the most amount of views. That's one of the factors in our awareness ranking. So awesome. I think you should check out that video, Spring Craft Gamer. I think you might enjoy some of the stuff in there. We also do some hashtag usage on Twitter and some hashtag usage on Instagram as the two other factors on there. So you might want to check that out if what you're, because then I think you'll just get the validation for what you're talking about. Awesome comment there. Then we've got another one from it looks like Spring Craft Gamers trying to take up all the questions tonight. If you want yours down here, just leave it hashtag Stolt like he did, and or she did. I don't know if it's a male or female. I was also thinking about just doing separate shows as well as the questions at the end of these videos, but doing a separate show on just the questions, because there's some really valuable insights like what they just mentioned in that last comment, and there's some super interesting stuff. So that's why I'm saying getting to the comment section, you can find some fucking gold down there. Yes, Andrew Yang supporters also like and follow Tulsi. Tulsi is VP with Yang. I watched Tulsi on Rogan. He's referencing Joe Rogan. 2 freaking hours. Took me 2 days to get through it. Joe Rogan has long podcasts, if you're not aware of him. He also has a boatload of attention between his podcast on YouTube. Just on YouTube, he has like 60 to 70 million views per month. Yeah, that's a lot. That's on one platform. That doesn't include like iTunes. That doesn't include Google, like, because you can distribute your podcast in both of those ways. And there's like apps like Stitcher and other apps where you can actually distribute your podcast. So that's not including those. So Joe Rogan has a boatload of attention. So to go on the Joe Rogan podcast, you can garner a lot more attention. And then to have much more of a dialogue instead of a speech, people are looking for new content, right? Because if you hear the campaign thing one, and then you hear it again, you hear it again, you hear it again, it's basically just the same thing where they might use slightly different inflection points or different words, but it's a lot of the same stuff. And you hear a lot of the same stuff on a podcast too, but it tends to be a little bit more of a dialogue than just like a speech or something like that. So I think that is tremendously helpful for her, because when you look at her versus Yang on the coverage from mainstream media, it's pretty fucking bad. Specifically for Andrew Yang, it's really bad. Like, they just don't talk about it ever, and they don't give him any time to talk when it comes to the debates or anything. At least that's what the data says. If you look at the minutes talked and whatnot. So, actually, that just gave me an idea. Let me know what you guys think. But we can actually total time for candidates. So what I'm going to do is put together a video where we actually take a look at all the debates that have happened so far, take all the candidates that participated in those, along with the minutes that they were actually talked during the debate, and just see the disparity of those over time, because that might be something interesting to actually take a look at in there. And this is in reference to Tulsi going on the Joe Rogan podcast and actually stealing Andrew Yang's attention. I think there's a big crossover between those two, and that's why he or she is actually mentioning that, where Andrew Yang had a tipping point and started to lose a little bit of attention when that podcast came out. So the podcast came out on the 26th of November, and the 27th, 26th, right in that time period, a bunch of the indicators that we follow in our power rankings, like Google search volume, YouTube search volume, the website ranking, Twitter ranking, Facebook ranking, YouTube channel ranking, donations ranking, and what we touched on earlier, like the awareness ranking, all of these different factors, right? Andrew Yang had a little bit of a starting to like an apex, right? And that was it, and it started to come down a little bit. So we'll have to see if that's just a moment in time where that attention comes back and he continues to go up, or where if that was like, if that just took the wind out of the sail completely and it continues to see a downward trend. I feel like their strategy shifted to um, paying attention to like other things, and I think that what you were doing in the first part of the campaign is probably was working. You continue to gain attention. I would probably just continue that. Try testing different things, but just continue doing that as well. So awesome, awesome comment. I'm at and actually Springcraft Gamer. I'm gonna just skip over that comment just for a second so we can actually let's just read through this because I do appreciate the comments and I don't want to skip over it at all. Just wanted to give somebody else a chance to get their comment on as well, but we can do a separate video on those ones. Andrew Yang's interest is clearly growing. Depends on where you look. Counter to your data on his websites. So yeah, it depends on where you look, because what we're looking at is a lot of macro data, and it, yeah. I think you are missing is what you're missing is that there's a ton of Andrew Yang sites. For example, I searched for YouTube for Paige Kaji instead of Andrew Yang. Her channel is uploading 2 to 4 times a day with 36 to 60-minute long videos. I've noticed the number of Yang focused channels exploding over the past month or two. If you add those in. Okay, so this is a very, very good point, and I definitely agree. I definitely agree 100%. The amount of awareness is going to continue to grow. More than likely, right? I would expect that to continue to grow, and his website has lost a little bit of ground, but when you look at it relative to the other candidates, he's like almost twice as popular a month ago than he was today from his website standpoint. It was like a 1,700 out of all sites in the US. Now it's like 3,400 in the US out of all the sites. But when you look at 3,400th out of all the other candidates, it's still about 2 times more popular than any other candidate. Like it's still ridiculously more popular than other candidates. So even though you've been losing ground, right? Like he's just continuing to lose that ground. He's still significantly more popular than some of the other candidates when it comes to the website ranking. So we have a website ranking where we take a look at a ranking in the US out of all US websites to see where their candidates' websites rank. So that's the primary factor. That's 80% of the ranking. And then I think it's 80 or 70 or something percent of the ranking. You can check out the channel, just look up website ranking when you go to the channel. And the other 20 or 30% comes from the engagement. So that's the total amount of time on the site as well as the total number of page views on the site. Because if you have a higher amount of page views relative to me, or you have a higher amount of time in terms of the average amount of page views per visit per visitor, or the average amount of time per visitor per visit, your site's better than mine, or you're telling a better story, your graphics or your layout of the site is better, right? Or people are just more interested in it. So his site is about twice as more popular, and I do see something referencing 750 in a day. I do honestly believe that when the numbers come out for Andrew Yang, that he's going to have a killer quarter, because your website's so much more popular than other people. So if you can start to optimize some of these things, it just makes sense. And if you look at his Instagram profile versus the other people's profile, I think that he's gaining. I'm going to be coming out with the Instagram rankings video pretty soon, so that should be out tomorrow at some point, possibly tomorrow morning, which is going to be 12/5 potentially. But we're doing an Instagram ranking from the data on Social Blade. Social Blade tracks social profiles across the web, so they'll do the YouTube channel, the Facebook page, the Instagram page, the Twitter account, etc. And you get certain statistics for each one of these profiles. So you get to see like the number of followers in terms of growth over a period of time, right? Kind of interesting data, because then I get to see if you're growing at 600,000 over a 30-day period and I'm at 30,000, I don't know, kind of says something, right? So we take a look at these things to try to understand what you're saying. Now, in terms of other people actually talking about him, I agree. I agree. There's a boatload of channels that are talking about him, and this is not captured in it. This is not captured in it. But I think that I think that the most authentic way to capture that is just going to be looking through the name, because when you start to factor in some of this other data as you're mentioning into the rankings, it could get a little bit cloudy, because some people talk about different things, right? Like I talk about Andrew Yang a lot, but at the same time I talk about fucking all sorts of shit. If you go back on the channel, like I talk about drugs, I talk about fucking working out, I talk about traveling, I talk about my girlfriend, I talk about business, I talk about mindset, real estate, like our mindset plus real estate, like all sorts of different stuff. I talk about many different topics. So it's not necessarily going to be super it could be cloudy if I looked at like my channel as saying it's Andrew Yang channel or something versus some of these other people like Paige. I think she primarily talks about Andrew Yang, but maybe she covers other topics too that are not Andrew Yang related. But I do think getting the message out that what you just mentioned is a strategic strength for Andrew Yang that is getting languished and atrophying. It's not could atrophy. So you have these evangelists that are willing to talk about you, willing to work for free because it is work to make videos, and they're willing to work for free. So I would think if somebody's willing to work for free, maybe we should give them some work or give them some value. So take the top 10 or 15 or 20 fucking YouTube channels that talk about him. Hey, let's do a fucking interview. Have his campaign set up interviews with each one of these, right? You could, if there's 20 of them, you could do 20-minute interviews with all of them, right? And you got a few hours with the content with all these other people. These people are going to distribute your message for you. That's way more effective than going to a fucking town hall in front of a couple hundred people. I don't know how somebody doesn't think that's a better idea to go to a town hall. I just don't understand that. I don't get it. I literally don't get it. It's more impactful to be in front of somebody. Like if I was sitting right across from you and we were having a conversation, yes, that's going to be more impactful. I get that. I understand that, right? And then you tell me something and I tell my girlfriend and maybe I tell two other people, right? And then maybe they tell two other people. So you've impacted 8 people or 10 people or 27 people. Right. So if you have 100 people at a town hall and you take that times 10, there's 1,000 people that you impacted through the 100 people that you went there, and then they told a few other people, right? Still awesome. That's super great. Now, now think about taking and say that was 3 hours of your time, right? So now take your 3 hours of time, right? Because you got to travel there, you got to actually be there for a little bit, and then you're probably going to stay for a little bit, take some pictures or whatever, and say hi to people, and then leave, right? So 3 to 4 hours. Now, if you took that same 3 to 4 hours and you put that into doing interviews with the top YouTube channels, these YouTube channels are going to give you fucking way more attention than 1,000 people. Even if it was 10,000 people, these YouTube channels are going to give you a fuckload more attention. Get your message out. Get more awareness. Get more donations. I don't understand why he's not doing something like that. I'd like to know what your thoughts are. You guys should share this little bit of video content right here at the end with him, or his campaign, and the whole entire actual video you should share with whoever your candidate is, because like this shit would work. I just started, as I mentioned, 45 days ago, figuring out TikTok. And I'm at like 1,300 followers from 302 followers about 45 days ago for when I went to Thailand. So that's just absolutely tremendous. And if you guys want to check out my TikTok, the link is in the description. Slightly different, completely different content than YouTube, 100% different content. The other thing is on Instagram, there's also a bunch of different content, a lot more fitness related stuff on Instagram and just different stuff because I'm testing stuff on TikTok to understand how TikTok works, how I can get to growing there. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. Again, just use the hashtag STOLT. Don't forget to subscribe.